Hello YouTube. Tamriel has countless stories to tell, but the story that we're talking about today is a particularly interesting one. It's a story of the time when one of the most legendary mages in all of Tamrielic history, the Nordic Archmage Shalidor, butted heads with the Daedric Prince of Madness, Sheogorath, and how we as the player eventually get involved. So strap in, as today we're talking about this conflict between the mage and the mad god. So as we've talked about before on this channel, Shalidor was a revolutionary mage. He was the first to take on the title of Archmage. He supposedly built the city of Winterhold, allegedly fought by himself against an entire army of Dwemer, took on the ancient Nordic city of Labyrinthian as his own personal laboratory, contributed to the foundations of the Magica schools, founded the College of Winterhold, and was one of the first humans to have ever extended their life far past their regular lifespan. And when he finally died, he made sure that his tomb had certain enchantments that his spirit could be called back to Tamriel when the mages of the world would need him. He was, let's just say, a quite accomplished guy, and he lived somewhere in the early First Era around the year 400. For a more extensive overview of his life, I recommend checking out my older lore video on Shalidor's life. It's a bit older, the narration isn't as smooth as it is now, but the lore is still good, so feel free to check that one out. That being said, near the end of his mortal life, when he'd left Labyrinthian, Shalidor started working on a project near and dear to his heart. He wanted to create a safe haven for mages of all eras to come, so that even when he himself died, he would have created a place where magic would be explored to the utmost, without limitations and the interference of those who mean peaceful researchers and mages either harm or want to use them for their own gains. As such, he created Eyevea, a small island to be run by himself and, after his death, by other mages. The island was to be fully independent from all other nations and just be run by mages for the purpose of peaceful exploration of magic. For the location of this little mage paradise, he chose a beautiful small island to the west of Tamriel, which officially fell in the rule of the King of Eleanor. In exchange for some magical secrets and artifacts, the King of Eleanor was willing to give the island away to Shalidor. Shalidor agreed and then hired a small army of elven builders from the Somerset Isles to build facilities on the island. Everything was quickly built on the previously uninhabited island, from a small practice ground, a mage hall, laboratories to a port. It was the ultimate safe haven for mages, and soon Shalidor made it his new home, along with a small legion of other mages and apprentices. For a few years the island flourished as mages from far and wide came to use its facilities and to become one of Shalidor's apprentices. But it wouldn't be long until a self-made disaster struck, because you see, at this time Shalidor was researching a life-extending secret, which the research wasn't going too well, but then the Daedric Prince of Madness, Sheogorath, appeared to him. The Prince of Madness had noticed that Shalidor was a little bit stuck in his research, and he just so happened to have something that could very much help Shalidor with his research. The Folum Discognitum, a Daedric artifact, a book created by Sheogorath which is filled with quote-unquote the collections of ramblings of madmen. That is nearly incomprehensible to most people, but apparently can be used by very skilled mages to discern very valuable informations and techniques only madmen would be able to come up with. And apparently this book contained just what Shalidor needed to progress with his research. So Sheogorath appeared to him, and he came with a deal. We don't know exactly what this deal was, but it was some sort of wager. Sheogorath bet the Folum Discognitum on the outcome, and Shalidor bet the island of Eyevea on the outcome, counting on the fact that he would be able to outsmart the Mad God. But he couldn't, and he lost the island to Sheogorath in this bet. According to Shalidor's dialogue, he had to witness the island being swallowed into Sheogorath's realm of oblivion, his apprentices and his colleagues screaming all the while as they were being brought into the Shivering Isles, which is Sheogorath's realm. This became Shalidor's greatest regret in life, and he would spend much of what remained of his mortal life trying to somehow get Eyevea back, becoming obsessed with trying to find a way to steal the island back from Sheogorath and bring the island back to Nirn. But the Mad God is not easily tricked, and all of Shalidor's attempts failed. He worked day and night trying to get the island back, so much actually that his wife ended up leaving him because of his obsession, and supposedly Shalidor then died alone not many years later, never being able to fix his greatest failure. That is, until the time of the Elder Scrolls Online, because remember what I said about him enchanting his tomb in such a way that his spirit would be pulled back when the mages of the world truly needed him? Well, during the Three Banners War, as the Mages Guild was trapped in forced neutrality in a large-scale war and Daedra overran the continent, killing a lot of mages, Shalidor's tomb activated and his spirit was pulled back to Tamriel to help his fellow mages. This is the story of the Elder Scrolls Online's Mages Guild questline. When you're on a somewhat routine mission for the Mages Guild, Shalidor's spirit appears to you and he tells you that he needs you to accomplish a great task, creating or rather bringing back a sanctuary for mages all across Tamriel so that they could study in peace rather than being dragged into a senseless war. You as the player and your Mages Guild mentor, a very accomplished high elf mage named Valast, see creating such a sanctuary as a great idea, so you decide to help Shalidor's spirit out. You as the player and Shalidor then enter the Shivering Isles, with Shalidor claiming that he's found a way to bring the island back using some magical books. But as you enter the Shivering Isles, Sheogorath appears to you, and of course he refuses to give you those books. Instead, he offers you a challenge. There are 4 magical books that Shalidor needs to bring the island back, so Sheogorath offers you 4 trials. You, the player, for each challenge that you complete, you get one of the books. You decide to agree. But as always with the Mad God, there is a catch. He never told you the locations of these trials. Rather, he hides hints to the locations in some of his own mad writings and gives you one for every trial. And Shalidor isn't allowed to help you with deciphering the hints. If he helps, the Mad God will no longer uphold the bargain. Luckily, you are of course part of the Mages Guild, and as such many people are skilled decipherers, and your mentor, Valast, can help you and Shalidor with deciphering the hints. So 4 trials, 4 hints. The trials are pretty weird, as is the case for most dealings that we have with Sheogorath. For example, in one, you have to play the main character in one of Sheogorath's mad plays, where the main character is a psychopath. In the other, you have to get his Fork of Horripilation back, and in one you have to evict people from Sheogorath's mad hotel. You know, Sheogorath stuff. Honestly, it's a pretty fun questline. You should play it, not gonna lie. However, as you are completing Sheogorath's trials, you start to notice that the deciphering of Sheogorath's writings is very taxing on your mentor Valast's mind, as you notice that slowly but surely the Mad God's writings are starting to affect her and she's slowly going mad. However, she's stubborn and she refuses to let anyone translate the writings. This means that when the 4 trials are completed, Valast is basically teetering on the edge of madness. But 4 trials were completed, so as promised Sheogorath brings the island back to Tamriel. But once again there's a catch, because he of course never said in what state he would bring the island back to Tamriel. So, Sheogorath being Sheogorath, the island is completely covered in Shivering Isles mushroom and other plants, but that's not even the worst, because Sheogorath has also sent a contingent of Daedra populating his realm along with the island. An entire legion of Dark Seductions and Golden Saints is stationed on the island, and it's up to you, the player, to get rid of them. So, you clean up the island by fighting some Daedra, and then Sheogorath once more appears, while your mentor Valast's mind is now truly starting to wander away from her. She's really becoming mad. Now, Sheogorath then reveals that this was all his grand design, as he cursed the writings containing the hints to the trials, and now Valast desperately wants to go with him to the Shivering Isles. Shalidor refuses to get Valast go with Sheogorath to the Isles, but as usual during this questline, and trust me this happens a lot, Sheogorath just pretends Shalidor is unimportant and shoves him aside, and instead asking you, the player, what to do. And he asks whether he can take Valast with him to the Shivering Isles or not. If you give him Valast, he promised to give you the very thing that Shalidor was once looking for, the Folium Discognitum. Now, that choice is up to you. Will you send Valast and her spirit forever to the Shivering Isles in madness, or will you claim the Folium Discognitum, which gives you quite some power, 2 whole free skill points in the Elder Scrolls Online? I personally chose Valast, as refusing to take her also results in Sheogorath removing the madness from her, but then you do sacrifice 2 skill points, so, you know, it's up to you. That said, the island is then free from Sheogorath and his Daedra. The mushrooms remain, but the entire island can now truly become a refuge for mages, with a tad of madness in the flora. And good all good, as they say. Unless you send Valast to the Shivering Isles, then you doomed someone to madness for the rest of eternity, but hey, at least you get some free skill points. Now, what happened to Eyevea after the Second Era, we don't really know. The island came under independent Mages Guild rule when Shalidor's spirit once again left Nirn after the questline, and presumably it remained that way for a while, maybe even up until the Third Era. Since it's geographically speaking close to the Altmeri Dominion in the 4th Era and the Mages Guild has fallen apart by that time, I wouldn't be surprised if the Thalmor have claimed the island in the 4th Era, likely scouring it for magical secrets left behind by the mages of previous eras. But to be fair, that's all just speculation. If the Elder Scrolls 6 is set as Hammerfell and we get free exploration of the Abyssinian Sea, you know, Assassin's Creed Black Flag style with boats, as I speculated that we might get, we might be able to visit Eyevea again at some point and learn of its fate, but for now this is the island's full story. And really, I can recommend playing this questline. It's a bit wonky since it's all solo dungeons in the Elder Scrolls Online, but yeah, it's really good. Like, Sheogorath's role is played perfectly, like how he would usually do it, and just the interactions of Sheogorath and Shalidor are just amazing, because Shalidor is really angry about what Sheogorath did to his island, even though, I mean, he went on the bargain himself. But, you know, Sheogorath just keeps ignoring him, calling him names, that kind of thing. It's just perfect. It's a really good story, to be honest, so I can recommend playing that questline if you're looking for something to play in the Elder Scrolls universe. Anyway, I really hope that you enjoyed this video and learned something new about the Elder Scrolls lore today, and if you did, maybe consider subscribing to the channel and returning for more Elder Scrolls lore videos in the future. I would really appreciate that. Now, all that remains for me to be done is to thank my top Patreon supporters, Mr. Bernardo Binda, Gabriel Binda, Polo Espadine, Belly Peritus, Athena Hyodis, Dragonborn of Nerevar, Volcure of Argonia, King Chris, Bulge, Scrap of the Scrolls, Doji, Fenrir, Sword of Bushido, Rakai, and Mr. Christmas. It's thanks to all these people and all the others on screen that this channel stays alive, and for that I'm very grateful. That said, I hope to see all of you in the next Elder Scrolls lore video. Bye bye.